Whether you're new, novice, or an expert in running a freeze-drying business, one of the challenges that most people face is innovation and knowing how to get a recipe in freeze-drying to be unique or to actually have different ingredients work for them. Well, this video is to close that gap because at Alaska Food Company, I visited with their chef who has made specific freeze-drying recipes for their entire company, and he's used his talents at a high-class restaurant in Alaska to transform things that he thought couldn't be freeze-dried into a tasteful meal and snack, where actually the freeze-dried product can actually enhance those taste buds and make it taste even better than before. Chef Lou at Alaska Food Company will give you inspiration for what you can achieve in your freeze-drying journey, and if you can find someone just like him, maybe you can develop that recipe that you've always been waiting for to make your freeze-drying business exponentially grow. Hey, we're talking to Chef Dale. Now, Chef Dale is kind of the researcher and developer of the different things that Alaska Food Company is doing here at their company. And he does anything from creating MRE meals that they were looking at to also helping them with their single ingredient breakup bites that we've seen. So I want to actually just know, Dale, how did you even step into a world where you would be making recipes for a freeze drying company?
Well, I had a relationship with one of the original co-founders of the company, Russell Cody. I had done some work with them at another restaurant that I was at where he was doing some marketing for the place, and got to know him pretty good. He had left that company, moved away. He came back, and one day out of clear blue, I get a call from him. He says, "Hey, I got this opportunity to start up on a freeze-dried company in Alaska." And he said, "I was wondering if you might want to help us out and help us develop some recipes and whatnot." And I said, "Well, I've never actually freeze-dried anything before, but yeah, sure, I'd be interested in that." So we got together, had our initial meeting. This facility here was a construction company facility originally. So it looked much different than it does today. So the place has really come a long way. When we first had our first meeting, it was here. There were trucks here and building materials laying around and so forth that I was looking at it, and they wanted me to design a facility in this building. And at first it looked kind of, boy, I don't know.
Okay, so, but a freeze-drying recipe, are there any differences in being a chef? You're making your own, mostly fresh ingredients. Is there anything different that has surprised you in how you go about making something that's then going to be freeze-dried?
Yeah, that was one of the questions I had initially, what they were looking for. His idea was restaurant quality food that was freeze-dried. And I had a lot of questions about that because I know some other companies, they create a lot of single ingredients and then they blend them together to make recipes out of. But they said, no, we want to create recipes in their full form and freeze-dry it like that. And so I just brought my experience and skills from the restaurant industry and literally just created recipes out of my repertoire and specifically what they were looking for. So you could just cook meals like you would at home and literally just freeze dry it. And it reconstitutes back exactly like it was before it was freeze dried.
And being just your background, your experience, what do you like about the aspect of reconstitution versus a dried, just freeze-dried snack?
Well, what I was surprised about is that during the reconstitution, I had a lot of questions about, is it going to come out with the same kind of flavor profile and the same consistency and texture before it was freeze-dried? And when I initially started creating recipes and doing the freeze-drying process, then in the reconstitution, it would actually come out exactly like it was before. I made a sausage gravy and it has a flour thickener in it. And I wasn't sure that after it was freeze-dried, when you go to reconstitute it, is it just going to come out like water? Or will that flour still maintain its integrity to keep the sauce thick? And of course, it kept the sauce thick. And, I was pretty surprised by that because I know a lot of companies use modified food starches and different things to get a result at the end of a freeze-drying process. So I was surprised that It actually came out exactly like when I made it. And even things like puddings that have egg yolks and cornstarch for thickening. So when you prepare them, they come out thick consistency, you chill them, and they're, custardy. And I wasn't sure how it was going to come out. After I made it, freeze dry it, you have to powder it. So it's a pretty hard chunk. Puddings come out. We powdered it, and when you reconstitute it, it had the same custardy texture that it did before. So there was a lot of things that I learned through the process I wasn't sure about. And so my curiosity was, well, why aren't other companies actually doing it like this? So, other companies got great products and stuff, but, they're not what I would call restaurant quality or a home cooked meal type of product.
Question with these Mountain House Peak Fuel companies. You're familiar with them?
Yes.
Okay, why do those companies use so many additives in that, and is that actually necessary coming from like a chef point of view?
No, it's not necessary, but I think that it helps them increase the volume of production when they use these additives in there. And it also cuts down on a lot of ingredient costs. I think a lot of it boils down to that. When they initially cook products, it's not necessary to have these additives once you freeze dry a product, because once you freeze dry a product, it preserves it already. So I think it's a lot of food science and cost-cutting techniques is the reason why they use a lot of these additives in there. Plus, they also source a lot of their ingredients are pre-made kind of things like sauces and gravies and stuff. They're not necessarily making them from scratch. They're buying a pre-made powder type product, utilizing it in the cooking process, and then freeze drying it. So it has to be listed as an ingredient on the package. So it's not necessarily anything that they're adding themselves in the process, but it's because of the ingredients that they source is the reason why it has a lot of stuff, for instance, like a brown gravy mix. So there's a lot of food science involved into creating these things, and a lot of artificial types of flavorings and preservatives that are added to it. So when they utilize ingredients like this, it becomes part of the labeling process. Smaller entities, someone like this hires a chef to create actual home-cooked or restaurant-based type recipes. We don't use anything like that. And when I source my ingredients, everything is made from scratch. Any of the gravies that are in the meals, it's all made from scratch. All natural ingredients that go in it, just like you would at home. Nobody at home adds preservative type things to their meals or anything,
We'll get back to the interview in a few seconds, but I wanted to jump in and encourage you to join the Freeze Dried Network. It's a really tight-knit community full of people who want to share ideas, encourage you, and really further the freeze drying industry. If you want to be a part of your passion for freeze drying, no matter where you are in your journey, join the Freeze Dried Network right now. Let's get back to the rest of the interview. I feel like people who have like a smaller freeze drying operation and they're wanting to get into like not just single ingredient types of products, but they want to develop meals. Are there things that you would advise looking into that would help you get a good meal started?
Yeah, well, here in Alaska, of course, I initially look at local sourcing. Anything that I can buy that's local to include in the recipe development. Anything that is surrounded by a gravy or a sauce or something in there. I don't source anything that's pre-made to add to enhance it. I make it from scratch,
Wow.
So like a brown gravy, I use the drippings from whatever the meats that I'm using and from a pan sear so that you get the dark caramel color on it, and then flour and butter and cream, milk, whatever that you're using in there. So we don't hold back on any of the ingredients. It's all, natural, just like you would do at home.
What ingredients have surprised you that actually have worked that you feel like people should explore doing more with mixing meals? Like you mentioned butter, you mentioned flour.
Yeah, now this was the thing that I was surprised about. So butter can be used in cooking, cream can be used in it, and it freeze dries beautifully. You have to be careful about the butter fat concentration in anything that you might be using that has cream or milk in it or butter. Freeze drying, what happens is if you use butter or cream and you cook it with all the other ingredients and stock or something in there, that butter fat will emulsify into everything else, and it allows you to be able to freeze dry it without having any fatty substances that float to the top or anything. There are things that you can't freeze dry, like peanut butter, and you can't freeze dry chocolate because the fat content is so high in those. The freeze drying process won't allow you to freeze dry fat.
So
unless it's emulsified into the recipe itself. Butter fat will actually blend in and melt in with everything. It's a concentrate. It's less concentrated once it's blended in with stocks and other things and other ingredients that you might have that have natural juices, so on and so forth. Even utilizing sugar and stuff. You can use sugar once it's emulsified into the juices of whatever you're cooking or preparing, but you can't over concentrate it because sugar will not freeze dry if it's over concentrated in a sauce or something. So I had experimented with some things like a cherry cobbler filling that required a certain amount of sugar in it, and realized that when I went to freeze dry, it came out very rubbery, and it just doesn't freeze dry all the way. So you have to readjust the amount of sugar you put in. Some might be a little more like low sugar. You can use honey in there a little bit to sweeten, which I've used before. But a lot of things surprise me that will freeze dry, because when you look at ingredients lists on some of the other companies' product labels, they use powdered creams, they use concentrated things, powdered milks and stuff, and I use whole fresh ingredients. And I wasn't sure, because when I read that, I think, well, maybe there's a reason why they're using that, maybe because the way that it will reconstitute or how it freeze dries. But then I learned that, of course, you can use the fresh ingredients. One of the biggest things about that is the cost, of course. The larger companies are going to use those kind of products because it lowers their costs in producing
But you're diluting the nutrients
of the
ingredients.
Yeah, the nutrient level and everything that you get out of it. So freeze drying, you retain 98% of all the vitamins and minerals and all the good stuff that's in there. So you don't lose it as like dehydrating. You lose more than 50% of all that.
Right, yeah.
But if you're sourcing stuff that's kind of pre-made, or you're using powdered things and stuff that might have been through a dehydration process before it was utilized in a recipe, and then it's freeze dried, you're not getting as much out of it, so.
Let me ask you a question. So you run a restaurant as well as a chef. So what types of ingredients do you use? Freeze dried ingredients? For example, people I know make their own freeze-dried, organic garlic powder, or they make they freeze-dry lemons, and then it's a different way to get that type of flavoring. Do you use that, or have you explored it now that you're in freeze?
Yeah, I have. So I created a strawberry cream pie as a recipe for AFC. So I've created several recipes, actually. The idea was to utilize the single ingredients that they produce and have recipes developed utilizing those single ingredient, freeze-dried ingredients to prepare something. So I came up with a lot of apple pie I made for them, the strawberry cream pie. The strawberry cream pie came out so good that I actually did that in my restaurant as a special, and utilizing freeze-dried strawberries in it. So it's utilizing freeze-dried components in something that you add other fresh ingredients to as a way of utilizing your freeze-dried ingredients. What happens in the case of the strawberry pie, once a strawberry is freeze-dried and you reconstitute it, it tends to concentrate the flavor of the strawberry. So it's much more concentrated strawberry flavor than actually if you ate it fresh.
I always thought about, too, with different fruits, that you would do a fruit filling for cakes or pies, things like that.
Yeah.
When you look at the option for a freeze-dried strawberry, but now you can crush it into a powder.
Yes.
Or you have the puree at the beginning, and then you freeze-dry it. Now you can basically naturally flavor a muffin or anything now, or frosting creams.
You create those single ingredients. You can grind them into a powder and fortify different recipes with it. You can even use the potato, grind it up, freeze-dried potato, grind it up and use it as a thickening agent in soup, so it has flavoring in there. And also it's more of a natural thickening agent than using maybe flour and butter or something.
Say that, like, since getting into AFC and being a part of this, like, it's really opened your eyes for what's in food.
Absolutely. Just the whole broad spectrum of single ingredients, from, you know, beets and carrots and any other kind of vegetable or fruit. The powdering of that stuff used to fortify and flavor enhance things is an amazing thing.
Fantastic.
Because that concentrated flavors, once they're freeze dried, it's amazing how it comes out. I sold a lot of that strawberry cream pie. I also ground up the strawberry as a powder and I sprinkled it on top as a garnish. And a lot of chefs in the country today are actually utilizing freeze-dried single ingredients in that very way right now.
That's awesome.
So when I was looking up and doing some research on this, I found out that this was a thing.
Yeah, where can we find things about Chef Dale?
Well, currently I'm chef at the Chop House restaurant in Wasilla at the Best Western Lake Lucille. And that's what I'm currently at and what I'm doing.
Yeah, so if you come to Wasilla in Alaska, I actually went to dinner there. I didn't even know he was the chef there. I just knew they had a chef. And a fantastic food, a great view. They have huge bay windows. You got to go check out the Chop House in Wasilla. Dale, thanks very much for meeting with me and sharing about freeze-drying recipes. Hey, don't stop here. I've got a full collection in this series of my visit to Wasilla, Alaska to visit Josh and Samantha Waisanen and their entire team at Alaska Food Company. Check out more videos in the thumbnails coming up next, or in the video description. I've got links to them all. See you there.